costs continue to go up, these trends are expected to continue. These trends will increasingly burden Canadian families in their retirement years. And I see that you pointed out that my time is up for now. I will continue this debate after question period. Thank you, Mr. Leader.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health will have 6 minutes remaining in her speech following question period. Statements by members, déclaration de député. The Honourable Member for Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, on Saturday, November 26, over 200 members of our Richmond Hill community gathered in memory of Gianluca Cilucci, the son of Leona and Carmelo and brother of Francesca, who we tragically lost 9 months ago. The event was organized by 9 of Gianluca's closest friends and included the unveiling of a stone plaque and recently planted tree in South Richmond Hill Greenway Park, just to the west of the elementary school he attended. Mr. Speaker, today I wear a pin on my lapel that is symbolizes with Gianluca's signature as a reminder of the noble, determined, and compassionate young man he was. Gianluca was a political science graduate who was passionate about social justice issues and aspired to join local law enforcement. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the hard work and wonderful tributes by Jacob, Robert, Matthew, Paolo, and Dominica. Gianluca, we love you. God bless your soul. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for York Simcoe.
Last night saw another page written in the storied history of Canada's unique game with the barn burner 104th Grey Cup. The Ottawa Redblacks and Calgary Stampeders gave us memories for the ages and a thrilling to the last play contest of the type Canadian fans have come to expect. Canadian football is part of our heritage and helps define us. There is no other annual event like the Grey Cup, which brings together fans from every corner of the country to celebrate Canada. Our distinct three-down game again demonstrated that it can't be matched for drama, heroics, and sheer entertainment. Our congratulations go to outstanding Canadian Brad Snopley and the rest of the Ottawa franchise on their underdog victory. Commissioner Jeffrey Orridge, Matt Maychuk, and the League can be proud of a championship that demonstrated the enduring appeal of our game. And the Post-Argonauts franchise, led by Michael Copeland and Sarah Moore, delivered a first-rate game day experience. Next year, the CFL will celebrate the 150th anniversary of Confederation by holding the Grey Cup game in our nation's capital. It will be a fitting finale to a year of celebrating Canada. It will show once more the enduring and special place Canadian football holds in the heart and culture of our country.
The Honourable Member for Canada Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, the holidays are a wonderful time of year when friends and families gather to celebrate.
Having said that, many Canadian families will not be celebrating during this period because they do not have access to lower-cost essential resources such as foodstuffs, goods that most of us take for granted.
Are recognized around the world for their generosity and compassion, and there is so much we can do for our less fortunate neighbours. Throughout the country, food banks can always use more canned meats and jars of peanut butter and baby food. In Canada Carleton, more volunteers are still needed to adopt a family or help us unload the buses. On Saturday, December 3rd, from 5:30 to 7:30, my team and I will be at 340 Leggett Drive to unload the best buses of food donations from the people of Canada. I encourage everyone to support their local food banks. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Vancouver East is a proud, diverse community with a deep and rich history. From art to culture to service provision, we have it all. The Japanese Language School and the Japanese Language Hall celebrated its 110th anniversary. This remarkable milestone is an illustration of the strength, determination, and dedication of the Japanese community to rebuild after the horrific internment of Japanese Canadians. Over at the Raycamp Cooperative Center, we celebrated its 40th anniversary. 40 years ago, the tenants at Raymar Housing Project fought hard for this incredible center, and today, this inner city center is a gem in our community, providing excellent support to a diverse and multicultural neighborhood. To cap off the celebrations, in its 20th year, the Eastside Cultural Crawl showcased the brilliant creativity and talents of more than 475 artists. If you ever want to see what a diverse, accepting, caring, strong, resilient, creative, and talented community looks like, come to East Van.
The Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Mr. Speaker, our government is making an important commitment to developing a Canadian poverty reduction strategy. Government can make a difference, but we can't do it alone. That's why the member for Bay of Quinte and I are fortunate to have a new program in our ridings called Creating Community, run by the Hastings Prince Edward Poverty Roundtable. With the help of an Ontario Trillium grant, this program brings together people who have personally experienced poverty in order to educate our community on the complexity of the issue and to bring the diversity of perspectives together with a goal of action on poverty reduction. This project deepens our understanding that poverty is not an individual experience, but a community one, needing responses at all levels. Community consultations are now underway on the causes, impacts, and solutions to poverty. Poverty often has a local context, so we look forward to a collaboration between our government and these local community initiatives. Thank you.
The honourable member for Chilliwack HoC.
Mr. Speaker, on November 25th, I attended an inspiring event in Chilliwack dedicated to helping sexually exploited women in our community. The Pearl Life Renewal Society was created by Joan Goosen and a group of dedicated volunteers committed to empowering girls and women who are sexually exploited, trafficked, and in prostitution through support, education, and love to embrace hope and renewal. We heard powerful presentations on how most girls trafficked in Canada are lured into the sex trade between the ages of 12 and 14. The most powerful story of the entire night came from Tamara, who shared her story of being sexually trafficked starting at the age of 13. After 15 years, through hard work, determination, and God's grace, she finally broke free and is now helping others to do the same. Pearl is working towards creating a safe space with wraparound services in Chilliwack to care for those trapped in the sex trade. Chilliwack is a compassionate, caring community, and I know I speak for all my constituents in wishing Pearl every blessing as they start this important ministry.
Honourable member for Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel. Mr. Speaker, who among us hasn't marveled at the details of the stained glass windows and ceiling of this venerable chamber? The greatest Canadian artist in this matter was Guido Ninghieri, born in Tuscany in 1885 and remembered as the Canadian Michelangelo. But this glory is coupled with the sadness of the memory that the Canadian government imprisoned him because of the identity of one of the people in one of his works. It was with great emotion that I visited his studio, which is practically intact and is a true time machine. Mr. Ninghieri had a gifted student, Umberto Bruni, who's become a celebrated Canadian painter, and I had the opportunity to wish him a happy 102nd birthday. I therefore urge all my colleagues to remember the life and career of the master and his student. The honourable member for Honoré-Mercier. Mr. Speaker, I wish to salute the work done by community organizations throughout the country, particularly in my riding in Anjou, Rivière-des-Prairies. They work against poverty, for the integration of immigrants, supporting families, breaking the isolation of seniors. They work hard day after day. When I see the work done by SAC Anjou, Centre d'Action Bénévole, Équipe RDP, Le Phare, Jeunes YLC, Carrefour Solidarité and Anjou, when I see the women's centers, Sarah, Optimist clubs, or various seniors clubs, I know these people do a lot with very little. But their lack of resources is 1,000 times compensated by their compassion, generosity, and their will to make a difference. Whatever is most noble and beautiful. To all the volunteers and employees of these organizations, I say you have my support, respect, and admiration.
For Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, Evraz is the largest producer of large diameter line pipe for oil and gas transmission in North America and employs over 1,000 Canadians, including jobs in my riding. They manufacture 100% made-in-Canada pipe, from scrap to steel to pipe. Evraz produces over 1 million tons of steel annually from recycled metal. Conrad Winkler, President and CEO of Evraz, visited me in Ottawa today to point out that every ton of recycled steel saves 1.8 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, 79% less than Chinese steel and using 64% less electricity. The infrastructure needed for Canada's pipelines can be made right here in Canada by Canadians for Canadians. Evraz is a classic example of a creator of good-paying, skilled, middle-class jobs. Pipelines bring jobs to operators, oil and gas drillers, and many other firms in local communities. The previous Conservative government approved numerous pipelines. Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government needs to do the same.
The honourable member for Mission, Maxwee, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to recognize the 33rd Annual Mission Christmas Candlelight Parade taking place this Friday in my riding. The parade is an opportunity for all to celebrate the holiday season and to come together with friends and family to create lasting memories. The Candlelight Parade has been a beloved tradition in the community for years and will showcase over 70 floats this year. I'm excited to take part in the parade this Friday, starting at 7:30 p.m. The festivities begin at the corner of 4th Street and 1st Avenue. I'm looking forward to kicking off this holiday season with my constituents at the Candlelight Parade. See you there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, while all members of this House know that Bombardier is one of the jewels in Canada's industrial crown, it would be easy to miss the fact that it was born in Valcourt, in my riding. The inventor Joseph Armand Bombardier designed the first vehicles to roll on snow in 1935. The Skidoo brand is engraved in our memories because of his invention of the snowmobile. In 1971, a museum dedicated to its memory opened in Valcourt. Faithful to its inventor, it recently underwent a complete renovation dedicated to ingeniousness. It is a source of inspiration, creativity, and innovation. The spirit of this place is that one has to go further than one's greatest ideas and do things that are within one's grasp and dreams. I encourage all members to visit this museum to see the universe of this inventor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chatham, Kent, Leamington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On May the 7th, while responding to a fire alarm, Constable Fraser Curtis and his partner were told by bystanders that there may be someone still in the burning building. He entered the building without protection and at great risk to his own life, crawled through thick smoke and fire and located the victim, who he heard coughing. Although the victim was disorientated, belligerent, covered in soot, and intoxicated, he carried him out of the building. On Thursday, November the 24th, Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Downswell awarded Fraser Curtis with the Medal of Bravery. Chatham Kent Police Chief Gary Conn stated, "All our officers are heroes amongst us, but clearly Constable Curtis's actions went far beyond the call of duty in saving this individual's life. These actions further support and exemplify why we choose to become police officers and enter into such an honorable vocation." Thank you, Fraser.
The honourable member for Ottawa South.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday in front of a capacity crowd of more than 33,000 and millions of TV viewers, two fabulous teams squared off in Toronto for the privilege of hoisting the coveted Grey Cup. This is an enduring Canadian symbol of hard work, sacrifice, and remarkable sportsmanship. I'll confess a bias, Mr. Speaker. When I sat down yesterday to watch the game with family and friends, I was rooting for our hometown team. I'm delighted to congratulate the Ottawa Red Blacks for an excellent season and for bringing the Cup home to Ottawa for the first time since 1976. I also want to congratulate the Calgary Stampeders for a hard-fought, competitive game that kept us on the edge of our seats. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of every fan of Canadian football, young and old, from coast to coast to coast, I thank the teams for their exemplary performance, both yesterday and throughout the season. Congratulations, Red Blacks.
Honourable member for Elmwood Transcona.
125 years ago today, November 28th, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers got its start in St. Louis, Missouri. In 1891, the electrical industry was in its infancy. Electrical workers were expected to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no safety equipment or standards to speak of. Their mortality rate was way above average, going as high as one death for every 2 workers hired. 10 delegates attended the first meeting representing 286 members from across the United States. Today in Canada alone, the IBEW represents over 70,000 workers in the electrical industry. The IBEW is at the forefront of making workplaces safer to ensure workers come home at the end of each day. IBEW members negotiate for fair wages and benefits in exchange for their work, which is second to none. Through the Code of Excellence program and first-class training, IBEW members learn to take pride in their work, to do it once and do it right. As a proud member of the IBEW, I call on all members of this House to join me in congratulating the union on its 125th anniversary.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, Ottawa's Red Blacks are this year's CFL champions, bringing home their first, yes, that's right, and I know we're all Ottawa Red Blacks fans here in this Ottawa chamber. Mr. Speaker, this ends a 40-year drought as a young team of only 3 seasons old. The team clearly was the underdog, but despite their youthfulness, they've made the Grey Cup twice already, and this time, thanks to the incredible leadership of Henry Burris and his teammates, the coaching and support staff, they took it all the way, winning 39-33. And now I look forward to the champions hosting the next Grey Cup on home turf, where I know all members of the House of Commons will go to celebrate this great national treasure and to cheer them on so that they can win their second Grey Cup in a row.
The Honourable Member for Fundy Royal.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I had the pleasure of attending the 2016 Governor General's History Awards for Excellence in Teaching ceremony, where 3 outstanding teachers from Fundy Royal Sussex Middle School were honored. Brian Clancy, Lisa Shepard, and Catherine Morneau gave their 6th grade students a challenge to teach their community about the Canadian experience at Vimy Ridge, but to do it in an awesome way. Those students, Mr. Speaker, were truly inspired and combined their short essays into a book that commemorates the 100th anniversary of the battle. Their creation is an impressive 75-page traveling history lesson presented in both French and in English for the world to read, to learn, and to understand the Canadian experience at Vimy Ridge. Congratulations to Mr. Clancy, Ms. Shepard, and Ms. Morneau, as well as to all of their students for your awesome work. We're so pleased to celebrate you here in Ottawa today.
Questions orales, oral questions. L'honorable député de Lac-Saint.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister showed a lack of judgment on the weekend in the comments he made following the passing of the Cuban dictator Fidel Castro, and the statement shocked many Canadians. Now that the Prime Minister has acknowledged that Fidel Castro was a dictator, can he acknowledge that he lacked judgment in making those remarks? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, the vast majority of leaders did not take that time to state that Fidel Castro was a dictator. They said that he had passed. They tried to say something positive about him. That is what the Canadian Prime Minister did, and that is what others have done, because the objective, Mr. Speaker, is to not worsen past issues surrounding antagonism, but to focus on positive aspects. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, when an American senator said they were embarrassing and shameful, well, we have to take that into account. Now, Mr. Speaker, since the Prime Minister has acknowledged that Mr. Castro is a dictator, we say that they must translate words into action. Will the Prime Minister make a change to his website? Will he change the words on a website to acknowledge that he has recognized him as a dictator? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wants to see democracy in Cuba. So do the Canadian people. For 50 years, we have had relations with Cuba that have served Canada and Cuba. Now is time to look at what we've all accomplished with the Cuban people, to help the Cuban people to move towards a more open society, with more freedom, with more democracy. This is what Cubans will do. We are in a good position to help them with the assistance of our Prime Minister. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean.
Ignoring the fact that the Prime Minister himself admitted that Fidel Castro was a dictator. However, he failed to mention the abuses of human rights and freedom under Castro in his official statement. Mr. Speaker, will he now amend his official statement on the Prime Minister's website to reflect what he had publicly admitted?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
As I said in French, I may also repeat it in Spanish if it's needed, Mr. Speaker. It's very important for Canada to use our relationship with Cuba for the last 50 years to help the people of Cuba now to have a better future for their children with more freedom and to go step by step to our democracy, and the leadership of our Prime Minister will be key for that.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, in expressing his personal sorrow at the passing of Cuba's communist dictator, had nothing to say about the Cubans Castro executed, imprisoned, tortured, and oppressed. Is that because the Prime Minister and his father never met the victims of Castro's tyranny? Or is it because the PM was only wined and dined by Cuba's communist 1%? Now that the Prime Minister has had time to reflect on his ill-advised condolences, will he tell us what he might do to improve the lives of the Castro regime's victims?
Order. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
What he will not do is to create situations where you antagonize even more the past. You encourage the people of Cuba to unify all together and to work hard together to give a better future for their children and with more freedom, and to go step by step to our democracy. And the leadership of our Prime Minister will be key for that. The fact that Canada strongly links people to people with Cuba over the last 50 years, not because we agreed with the regime, but because we wanted to support the people of Cuba, will be an asset, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. Members may not have as much respect for members on the other side as they would like, but I know they have respect for this place, and I'd like them to show it. The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, instead of paying tribute to a dictator, should have offered condolences to the long-suffering, oppressed people of Cuba. The Prime Minister should have spoken of hopes for a better democratic future for the people of Cuba. Instead, the PM not only expressed personal sorrow at Fidel's passing, but described as a real honor his recent meeting with Fidel's successor, the equally ruthless Raul. Mr. Speaker, why will this naive Prime Minister not address democracy, human rights, and the rule of law?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
When Fidel Castro passed away, the leaders of the world, without exception, or maybe some exceptions, did not call him, very few exceptions, did not call him a dictator. They said about the same thing that our Prime Minister. Ban Ki-moon, under former President Castro, Cuba may advance in the field of education, literacy, and health. The European Union has said, a man of determination and historical figure. The Mexican President, Fidel Castro, was a friend of Mexico. Spain, a figure of enormous historical importance, son of Spaniards. Britain, historic if controversial.
L'honorable député d'Outremont.
The Honourable Member for Outremont. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are afraid that the Liberals are going to break their promise that the election of 2015 will be the last one held under the current system. The special multi-party committee will be presenting its recommendations in the next few days. Is the minister backing down on the formal promise made by the Liberals because the committee isn't helping the Liberal Party? Or is it simply because they've rediscovered the charms of a system that has just given them another false majority?
The Minister of Democratic
Speaker, I'd like like to thank the honourable member for his question. He knows, just as well as every member of this House does, that we've been committed to this file since we began our mandate. We gave the majority on the committee to study electoral reform to the opposition, Mr. Speaker. My parliamentary secretary and I have been out there connecting with Canadians from coast to coast to coast, and we've been very clear from the very beginning, Mr. Speaker, that we will not move forward on reform without the broad support of Canadians. I'm looking forward to receiving in this House the committee's report and moving forward then.
The report released by StatsCan confirms that sexual misconduct is widespread in our military. 1,000 reports in the last year alone. 80% of all forces members saw, heard, or personally experienced, quote, inappropriate sexualized behavior. We're not talking about the 1950s here, we're talking about 2015. And this report is only the tip of the iceberg. The
government can't simply wash its hands of the situation, saying it's unfortunate. What specific action will be taken now to deal with sexual assault in the Canadian Forces?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, sexual misconduct of any kind is completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Through Operation Honour, the Canadian Armed Forces remains fully committed to eliminating harmful and inappropriate sexual behaviour within its ranks. I sincerely thank the over 43,000 Canadian Armed Forces members who participated in the survey on sexual misconduct. We need to do better, and we will do better, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, the minister says she respects the work of the all-party committee. Then you have to wonder why she spent the weekend on television undermining the work of that very same committee. The Liberals were elected and campaigned on the promise to make 2015 the last election under the unfair first-past-the-post system. But since forming government, this minister has increasingly backed away from this commitment. This when the all-party committee is just days away from issuing its report to all Canadians. Why is the minister undercutting the committee's work? And will she now clearly commit to implementing the recommendations of our committee?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member opposite for his work on the committee, and I'm looking forward in this House to receiving that report on December 1st. But he asks what I was doing on television over the weekend. Mr. Speaker, we introduced Bill C-33 in this House over the weekend. We repealed the unfair elements of the Fair Elections Act. We extended voting rights to those Canadians living abroad. That's what I was doing.
A member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Fascinating that she threw a committee of the House of Commons under the bus while she made these announcements in this bill. She's supposed to be the Minister of Democratic Reform, not the Minister for undermining democratic reform. Perhaps we should remind the Minister of her single most important job was to make good on the Liberal promise that 2015 was the last election under first-past-the-post. The committee has heard from hundreds of experts and thousands of Canadians who have told us overwhelmingly that the current system distorts the democratic will of Canadians. When the committee is working so hard to build a compromise, when so many Canadians are saying yes to reform, why is it that this minister has become the voice of no?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, as Minister for Democratic Institutions, I've been committed to this file since I began my mandate. The member opposite knows well that I have a great deal of respect for the work of this committee, for their independence, that I'm looking forward with a lot of eagerness, Mr. Speaker, probably more than any other member in this House, to receiving that report on December 1st. And Mr. Speaker, we're going to take the time to give that report the respect it deserves and present this House with a thoughtful plan forward.
Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, before this Liberal government came to power, Canada was consistently ranked as one of the least corrupt nations in the world. But these cash for access fundraisers are showing a pattern of behavior that smears our Canadian reputation. From the Prime Minister's secret meetings with Chinese billionaires, to the Justice Minister's lawyer fundraisers, to the Finance Minister's dealing with drug companies suing the government, this pattern of behavior has to stop. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister do the right thing and end these cash for access?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as the member very well knows, we have some of the strictest rules around fundraising of any level of government, and our party follows those rules. In fact, the rules clearly state that only Canadians can donate to political parties. The Chief Electoral Officer stated that Canada's political financing laws are the most advanced and constrained and transparent in the world. In regards to ticketed fundraising events, he confirmed that every party and every campaign does them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, Canadians are perceiving corruption. Mr. Speaker, international media are now reporting on the Prime Minister's questionable fundraising. The New York Times, yes, Mr. Speaker, the New York Times is even reporting about this Prime Minister's questionable shakedowns. They're highlighting the secret fundraisers the Prime Minister had with communist Chinese officials. They're drawing attention to the payment he gave to the Trudeau Foundation, a foundation controlled by the Prime Minister's family. What is it going to take for the Prime Minister to end his unethical fundraising scheme?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it's important that all members and Canadians note that the Prime Minister has no involvement with the Trudeau Foundation. This is something that's been stated time and time again. What Canadians elected us to do was to work hard for them. And this government has had unprecedented levels of public consultations to make sure we are responding to the very challenges facing Canadians. And we will continue to do that work. Once again, Canadian fundraising rules are some of the strictest in the world, and we will continue to follow them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, for years the Trudeau Foundation relied on donations from Canada. It was 2014 when the foreign money started to flow. In 2015, nearly $430,000 of foreign donations were given to the foundation. But the Prime Minister landed a huge donation when his communist Chinese friends gave $1 million, including $50,000, to a building of a statue of his father. Wow. When will the Prime Minister admit that mixing his personal, party, and government business is wrong, and when will he put an end to it?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, as the member has stated, the Foundation confirmed that discussions on the donation began in 2014 when Prime Minister Stephen Harper actually was the Prime Minister. The Foundation is an independent charity that supports research and in social sciences and humanities. And I would hope that the member opposite supports organizations that promote research. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I doubt it.
Order. Honourable député de Beauport.
The honourable member for Beauport, Côte de Beaupré, Île d'Orléans-sur-la-Voie. Mr. Speaker, what did the Liberals learn during their 10 years in purgatory? Absolutely nothing. In 2004, we had the Gomery Commission to shed light on the sponsorship scandal. A few days ago, we learned that Chinese billionaires are funding the Liberal Party to have special access to the Prime Minister and his ministers. Mr. Speaker, given these revelations of conflict of interest, will there be another commission of inquiry? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we find it odd to note that the member opposite is attempting to politicize this issue at a time when we know that the system was put in place in 2012 under the previous government and that it was approved by their Minister of Finance, Joe Oliver, in July 2015 before Canadians threw them out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And Prairie Mackenzie.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The waters continue to muddy around this Prime Minister's cash for access schemes. In trying to defend foreign donations to his family-run foundation from Chinese billionaires, the Prime Minister claimed that he had stepped away from all family-related responsibilities after he got elected. But the facts paint a different picture. Right. The Prime Minister was elected in 2008, but he continued to help run the foundation until 2014. What is the Prime Minister trying to hide, and why won't he come clean with Canadians about what he promised these communist officials in exchange for the $1 million payment?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
It's good to be back in this place, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's important to note that Canadians have elected us to get some real work done and to actually respond to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. And the member knows very well that when it comes to fundraising, we have some of the strictest rules in the world. And in regards to ticketed fundraising events, the Chief Electoral Officer that confirmed that every party and every campaign fundraise. This government has undertaken unprecedented levels of public consultations to make sure that we are responding to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. And in regards to accepting donations, the member knows very well that only Canadians can donate.
A member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has stated that Chinese nationals were at the Liberal Party fundraisers so that he could, and I quote, draw investment from these billionaires. He secured some investment, all right, $1 million for his family-run foundation. Canadians deserve answers. These events break every element of the Prime Minister's ethics rules. When will the Prime Minister finally come clean with Canadians and admit what he gave in exchange for this $1 million payment?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it's good to note that the Canadians have elected a new government, and this government does things very differently. It almost feels as if the member opposite is...
Order. Order. Most members in all parties are able to listen to question period to both sides without reacting. The rest need to do so also. Though that fairly small number that doesn't listen should start listening. The Honourable Government House Leader has the floor.
And the member opposite knows that when it comes to fundraising, we have some of the strictest rules, and this government will continue to follow the rules. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, a new survey from Stats Can reveals today that 1 out of every 4 women has been sexually assaulted at least once in her career in the Canadian Armed Forces. In fact, the assault rate is twice as high as in the general population, and often the perpetrator is a superior in the chain of command, and that is unacceptable. Mr. Speaker, what plan of action does the government have to deal with this crisis?
The Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, it is sobering and disappointing to know that members continue to be victimized and feel threatened in our work environment. But these survey results are critical for all of us in understanding the true scope and nature of the institution's problems. The findings will assist the Canadian Armed Forces to focus our efforts in the areas of greatest concern. Every man and woman who are willing to serve their country despite many dangers and sacrifice our military service deserves a professional environment in which they are treated with respect and dignity. And as I stated, Mr. Speaker, we do need to do better. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Very clearly, better indeed. A Stats Can report is deeply troubling and confirms that sexual misconduct is still rampant in our military, and it only considers members currently serving. It does not include the young women who are most vulnerable, those in the cadets, boot camp, or on course, nor does it include the women and men who have left due to military sexual trauma. We need a clear plan of action. When will the minister implement a strategy to fight against sexual misconduct in our military?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, General Vance, the Chief of Defence Staff, has launched a plan. It's called Operation Honour, and this survey was part of that plan to get the full extent of the situation. And now this provides the necessary information to continue to evolve the plan moving forward. As I stated, this type of behaviour is completely unacceptable, and we will root it out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, over 100,000 out-of-work energy workers need this government to stop dithering and delaying on getting pipelines built. It's been almost 5 months since a federal court ruling on Northern Gateway. It's been 6 months since the NEB approved the Trans Mountain expansion and 7 months since it approved the Line 3 replacement program. Even if the Liberals finally approve these pipelines, and we hope they will, it doesn't help energy workers unless they get built. Will the Liberals commit today to do everything in their power to ensure that any pipelines that they actually approve will actually get built?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we did commit to the people of Canada that all of those projects that were under review would be subject to interim principles and timetables and deadlines. From January 27th, we have been respectful of all of those deadlines and all of those timetables, as we will continue to be, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, Indigenous support for the Northern Gateway continues to grow, but the Liberal government has thrown up its hands and walked from the table. I'd like to quote from the 31 First Nations that are equity partners. This project is a new way of doing business and sets a precedent for collaborative partnerships between First Nations, Métis communities, and the resource industry. Our ownership will ensure a sustainable, prosperous future for generations to come. Is the minister going to betray these First Nations who have negotiated in good faith?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Speaker, we have been engaged in meaningful consultation with Indigenous people on all of the major energy projects that are currently under review. Unfortunately, it was the former government that was insufficient in its consultation with the very people that the member has just referenced, so much so that the Federal Court of Appeal quashed the application. So we are responsible for a new and more meaningful way of discussing these projects with Indigenous peoples, and we will be loyal to the timetables that we have announced.
Member for Battleford, Lloydminster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last March at his family reunion in Washington, the Prime Minister claimed to have an easy fix for the softwood lumber file. He said in the new era of cooperation with President Obama, all would be settled in a mere 100 days. Well, some 200 days later, I guess those files didn't fix themselves, Mr. Speaker. After years of agreement and stability, when can Canadian forestry workers expect the Liberals to get serious about this serious issue?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, it was the previous Conservative government that allowed the agreement to expire and did absolutely nothing to initiate negotiations. Canada is prepared for any situation, and we will vigorously defend the interests of Canadian workers and producers. International courts have always ruled in our favour in the past, and we're confident they will continue to do so. Meanwhile, I'm continuing negotiations with Ambassador Mike Froman, whom I will meet in Geneva over the weekend. But we're seeking a good deal for Canada, not just any deal.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, the Minister should remember the number 390. 390 is the number of days she's had to avoid a trade war with the U.S. 390 is also the number of days where the government failed miserably in terms of international relations. The Prime Minister's judgment and charm offences aren't doing anything for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, this week, Conservatives will be travelling to Washington to talk about forestry workers' concerns. What's the minister waiting for to go pack up her suitcase, go and negotiate an agreement for Canada? The Honourable Minister. As I said, Mr. Speaker, Mike Froman, whether he's in Geneva or somewhere, we will be working to continue the negotiations. We are defending the interests of our industry, and last week, the CEO of the Forestry Council of Quebec said that our government is doing, and I quote, excellent work. We are looking for a good agreement for Canada, not simply any old agreement.
Honourable Member for Rimouski-Niget-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, in a burst of candour last week, the Minister of Finance finally admitted what we've been saying from the beginning, that small municipalities won't be able to take advantage of the infrastructure bank. He said that the private sector will be investing in big transformational projects with high rates of return.
No wonder that Michael Sabia is openly talking about a return of 7 to 9%. Why would Liberals take $15 billion that would have been accessible to places like Valleyfield or Nanaimo to redirect them into projects that will be tailor-made for Montreal or Vancouver?
Bravo. Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, out of the 980 projects that we have approved so far, more than 600 projects are in smaller communities throughout the country. Let me name a few of those. Water and wastewater upgrades in Red Deer. Upgrades to the town of Lanigan Water's facility in Saskatchewan. Water wastewater treatment upgrades in Selkirk and Gimli, Manitoba. Water treatment plant upgrades in the town of Deseronto, Ontario. Sewage plant upgrades in West Lorne, Ontario. Hard surfacing of Trans-Labrador Highway.
Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Party promised to put in place a rigorous and credible environmental assessment practice. Now we've learned that the interim chair of the NEB, who was named by Mr. Harper and is in favour of Kinder Morgan, will himself appoint the members of the evaluation committee that will be studying Energy East. So, in other words, nothing has changed, and the credibility deficit for environmental assessment by the NEB is still there. Mr. Speaker, when will the government put in place an assessment process that Canadians can trust?
And the Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the member is right. Canadians want an environmental assessment process that they can trust. And that's why the government has established really a countrywide survey of Canadians on the Environmental Assessment Act, on the Fisheries Act, on the Navigable Waters Act, and on the National Energy Board. And all of those results will come back to the government in late March, and we will have a long-range plan of environmental assessment. I hope that the member is not suggesting that the government should tell the National Energy Board chair who should sit on what panels.
I would hope not.
Member for Halifax.
Mr. Speaker, every day the devoted team at the Canadian Museum of Immigration at Pier 21 in Halifax, one of Canada's 6 national museums, brings life to the story of over 1 million immigrants who landed at the Port of Halifax between 1928 and 1971. Over the next 12 months, many positions will become available on the boards of all 6 of our national museums. Can the Minister of Canadian Heritage tell us how she plans to fill these positions?
Minister of Canadian Heritage.
I'd like to thank my honourable colleague from Halifax for his important questions. Canada's museums are spaces of exchange, creation and discovery. And I was proud to launch a new process for the 45 positions available on the boards of our 6 national museums.
The government has put in place a much more open and transparent approach based on merit, and I invite all Canadians who love history, science, or the arts to put their passion at the service of our national museums. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, we've just learned that a CF-18 of the Canadian Forces crashed this morning at 11:09 near Cold Lake in Alberta. I would like to ask the Minister if the Minister has any information to give on this situation and what is the condition of the pilot.
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, regrettably I can confirm that one CF-18 has crashed near Cold Lake. Search and rescue has been dispatched and they are on station, and we'll have more information as it comes in. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk and Lake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, we have just learned that a CF-18 fighter jet crashed at CFB Cold Lake. Our thoughts and our prayers are with the pilot, the families, and indeed everyone in Cold Lake and in the armed forces throughout Canada. Can the Defence Minister update this House as to the status of this terrible, terrible accident?
Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, regrettably, the situation is ongoing. I have been receiving reports while I've been sitting here. When I have more information, I will be update Canadians and this House when I can. Our hearts and prayers are with families, and search and rescue is on station at this moment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister has been to Africa twice to find a peacekeeping mission. The Prime Minister is just coming back from Africa. Will we get any details on this peacekeeping mission before Christmas, and will we have a debate on this dangerous mission?
Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, as I stated, we are committed to peace operations. We are gathering all the necessary information and working within a whole of government aspect with my colleagues. The goal is to have this information before the new year, and I look forward to sharing all this information with the House and Canadians as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk, Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is dangerously naive about world affairs. He admires a brutal communist dictatorship with raises doubts about how he views other global threats and how to address them. Our security is too important to be left to this Prime Minister's risky ideological whims. Our troops are in Iraq and will shortly be in Mali fighting jihadi terrorists, but the government will not call it a combat mission. How can the Liberals put our troops in harm's way when their ideology is based on making sure the worst regimes in the world feel comfortable at dinner with Canadian diplomats?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of the work that Canada is doing around the world, especially when it comes to our Canadian Armed Forces. Whether it's currently in Iraq, our upcoming mission in NATO, and the peace operation that we'll be conducting as well. We know that the risks, and we will make sure that our Canadian Armed Forces have the right tools, the right training to be able to fulfill those missions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Victoria.
Victoria, people are dying from drug overdoses in record numbers. Last week, we lost 5 people in 72 hours. Since January, we've lost 56 in Victoria and 622 across BC. This government has done nothing to change a conservative law that makes it extremely difficult to open safe injection sites. Vancouver Mayor Robertson has called on the government to speed up the application process. Will the minister move immediately to expedite these applications and declare the opioid crisis a national health emergency.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
I thank the member from Victoria for this question, and I share the member's concern for this very serious problem. In this country, members need to know that 6 or 7 people die every day as a result of opioid overdoses. This is simply unacceptable. I share the member's grief. I share the member's passion. I work on this file every single day. I have already enumerated many of the actions that we have taken. We will take steps to make sure that safe supervised consumption sites are available in this country, and every step that we can take will be done in collaboration with our partners.
The Honourable Member for North Island Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, the Pacific Integrated Commercial Fisheries Initiative has been vital for building capacity of First Nations fisheries. Yet every year, First Nations communities are unsure of the continuation of this program. It generates good jobs in our communities that are desperately needed while fostering environmental sustainability. The facts are clear. When will this Minister of Fisheries finally listen to First Nations and commit to long-term renewal and expansion of the Pacific Integrated Commercial Fisheries Initiative?
Minister of Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I share our colleagues' support for this important program. It has allowed successive governments to build capacity in Indigenous communities in a way that frankly offers them commercial opportunities and economic development opportunities while respecting traditional local knowledge, science-based management. So I share her enthusiasm for the program. I'm confident that the government's commitment to working with Indigenous communities will allow us to be in a position to continue to make these investments, and I look forward to working with her in that regard.
The Honourable Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, this past week, the world's longest ruling tyrant died. Canadians were appalled to hear the Prime Minister state, and I quote, "It is with deep sorrow that I learned today of the death of Cuba's longest-serving president." Well, Mr. Speaker, he was Cuba's longest-serving president because he persecuted, oppressed, and killed those who opposed him. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Affairs Minister should have condemned his legacy rather than mourning their loss. How could the Liberals celebrate such a vicious reality?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
I want to thank my colleague to give me the opportunity to repeat again. In fact, most leaders around the world have said about the same than the Prime Minister, that at a time where the people of Cuba will go to transition, we hope, toward more freedom and democracy, we need to support them and to encourage them to not antagonize about the past, but to unify all of them together to give to their children a better future. And we may count on Canada for that. We have 50 years of unbroken relationship with Cuba, and we'll have a Prime Minister that has strong links with Cuba that will help for that.
Member for Calgary Shepherd.
Mr. Speaker, my family fled the communist regime in Poland, so I know a little bit about communist repression. After decades of brutal repression in Cuba, this past weekend was a time that Cubans could finally dream for freedom. Under Castro's rule, Cubans who opposed him faced torture, imprisonment, forced exile, or death by firing squad. Why would the Prime Minister choose to celebrate Fidel Castro when he should be looking at ways to empower the Cuban people?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, it's precisely in order to help the people of Cuba to be united instead of antagonizing about the past that we need to encourage them to do the reforms that will bring them more freedom and toward democracy. And the fact that Canada had a strong support for the people of Cuba over the last 50 years under conservative as liberal governments will be an asset, and we'll have a work to do. I suggest to everyone to practice your Spanish.
Excellent. Member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan. Order.
Mr. Speaker, we want a better future for the Cuban people, and the way we remember the past shapes the future. The Liberals are cozying up to dictators the world over in Cuba, China, Iran, Belarus, and Russia, and ignoring questions of fundamental justice, freedom of the press, and every single type of minority rights. The Liberals' campaign for the UN Security Council seat seems to involve ignoring the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. When will the Prime Minister stand up, apologize to the victims of this brutal regime, and finally express his solidarity with the Cuban people?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Speaker, the fact is the Cuban people have different views about that. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, and the only way to help them to move on in order to have an improved society with freedom and democracy is to not antagonize about the past as my colleagues want to do. Is to focus on the future altogether, Canadians united with the people of Cuba, to support them all the way, and we'll do it under the leadership of this Prime Minister.
Ex-member for York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's diversity is a source of strength and pride. Sadly, minority communities are sometimes targeted for attack, including recent incidents in Toronto, Ottawa, and Regina. Groups like the Centre for Israel and Jewish Affairs have been calling for improved support to help at-risk communities protect their institutions. Can the Minister of Public Safety please tell us what the government is doing to ensure the safety of minority communities and to help us protect our schools, community centres and houses of worship?
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the representations made by the Centre for Israel and Jewish Affairs and the National Council of Canadian Muslims and others. There is no place in Canada for racist and hateful conduct like we've seen sadly in recent weeks. This morning, I announced a stronger security infrastructure program which funds up to half the cost of security projects for nonprofit community institutions. The program is now more accessible and broader in scope to help protect Canada's diverse communities. An attack on any one of them is an attack on all of us.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Mr. Speaker, recently a number of thalidomide survivor victims were here in Ottawa pleading to be included in the government's compensation package. The minister says that cases are being reviewed, but these folks are being denied. Will the minister do the right thing and tell Crawford Class Action Services to conduct a professional in-person examination of these claimants as was carried out in a previous compensation package?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, as the member knows, our hearts go out to thalidomide survivors, and we are deeply committed to offering support to them to live the rest of their lives in dignity. There is no definitive medical test for thalidomide, and so an objective review process has been used to assess the eligibility of individuals, and based on this process, I'm pleased that dozens of new individuals have been added to the program, bringing the total to 122. Additional new survivors may still be identified, as I am pleased to say that there are still applications under review.
Honourable member for Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, in the past 2 decades, Canada has lost and continues to lose auto jobs to China, Mexico, and Japan. Despite solidarity between the manufacturers, the unions, and the chambers of commerce, who all agree that Canada needs a national auto policy, this minister is still a holdout. The workers have done their job by creating $1 billion worth of opportunity for investment for jobs and productivity in this country. But the Ontario Liberal minister believes we don't need a strategy, and the federal Liberal minister is just indulging him. When will this minister put aside partisan interests and instead be truly innovative and side with Canadians and not his Liberal cousins?
Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, we are taking action on this very important file, and I'd like to remind the member opposite we extended the Automotive Innovation Fund, a fund that we're working with the auto sector and labour movement to make sure we bring investments into Canada. We also made additional investments in the Automotive Supplier Innovation Fund, which is helping our small supplier base become more innovative and connected to global supply chains. The bottom line is we understand the importance of the automotive sector. This creates direct and indirect jobs of 500,000 across the country, Mr. Speaker. We're going to continue to make investments and provide growth in this particular sector. We're taking action, Mr. Speaker, and that's what matters.
Honourable member for Brampton North.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development recently visited India to promote Canada's innovation agenda. As the Vice Chair of the Canada-India Interparliamentary Friendship Group and somebody who takes a great interest in this relationship, can the Minister please highlight some of the key accomplishments of his trip to India?
Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member from Brampton North. Last year, Canada's trade with India grew to $8.1 billion, which was a 30% year-over-year increase. And that is why I had the opportunity to travel to India to strengthen that very important relationship, along with my colleague, the Minister of Immigration. And together, we signed an action plan between Canada and Maharashtra on urban infrastructure development, We announced 10 new projects funded through IC Impacts, a partnership aimed at building sustainable communities and smart cities. The bottom line is, Mr. Speaker, we want to help Canadian companies enter the Indian market to create good quality, middle-class Canadian jobs.
Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government has given away billions outside of Canada to secure a UN Security Council seat. The Prime Minister is spending in other countries around the world and is forgetting about those in need here in Canada. 600,000 seniors live below the poverty line in Canada, and hydro prices in Ontario take more out of their wallets each month. They have no representation around the cabinet table to fight for them to live comfortably. Mr. Speaker, when will the Liberals stop giving away money to buy a Security Council seat on the backs of today's seniors and vulnerable Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful for this opportunity to stand in this House and remind all members how important the welfare and the well-being of seniors have been for this government in the last year. We've increased guaranteed income supplement by almost $1,000, taking 13,000 seniors out of poverty. We've brought back to 65 years old the age of eligibility to old age security, which means that 100,000 seniors will avoid falling into severe poverty. We've enhanced the CPP, Mr. Speaker, meaning that over the next few years, 300,000 seniors will be lifted out of income insecurity, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, in 2014, the Supreme Court confirmed that banks must respect Quebec's consumer protection laws. Now, what is this Liberal government doing? Well, they're changing the law to get around the Supreme Court's decision and reduce the bank's obligation to respect Quebecers. This attack on Quebec's society is taking away from people their right to challenge abuses by big banks. Mr. Speaker, when will the 40 Liberal MPs from Quebec wake up and stop supporting this scam? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we want to be clear. We want to protect Canadian consumers across the country. We are not adding anything with the changes. We have a situation where the federal law will protect Canadian consumers across the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Joliette. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance is the servant of the banks. He's acting like a lobbyist, and it's people who are going to pay the bill. After securities, the federal government is now attacking Quebec's Consumer Protection Act. This is a reversal of 50 years of progress at a time when Quebec would rather modernize the law. But it's good for the banks, who are going to increase their profits with money from the pockets of Quebec's families. Mr. Speaker, who is writing the government's bills? Is it the Bank of Montreal, Scotiabank, the Royal Bank, CIBC? Which one? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we want to protect Canadian consumers across the country. That is why we have rules that are clear. Canadian consumers are protected, and there are no changes being made to our regulations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, who is going to these $1,500 Liberal cocktails with the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister? Well, high finance, bankers, real estate promoters, and the Canadian establishment. This looks like preferential influence, Mr. Speaker. With the Liberals, well, we've already seen this movie. The interests of the people go after the interests of donors to the Liberal Party. Can the Prime Minister, this self-proclaimed great Democrat of the people, put some order in political financing by bringing back public financing and by limiting donations like it was done in Quebec? Yes or no? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, as the member knows very well, rules concerning political financing are the strictest in the country, and our party follows the rules. The rules say that Canadians, only Canadians can make donations. The Chief Electoral Officer has said that our electoral financing laws are the best in the world, and we continue to follow the rules. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of the recipients of the 2016 Governor-General's History Awards. Rita Gravina, Catherine Pfaff, Geneviève Marois, Elizabeth Freeman Shaw, Sarah Murdoch, Holly Richard, Brian Clancy, Lisa Shepard, Adam Pounder, Laurie Buchanan, Robert C.H. Sweeney, Laura Schneider, Chris Folds, Myrna Foster, Kirsten Ribat. I believe the Government House Leader has a point of order. Honourable Government House Leader.
Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais annoncer...
Mr. Speaker, I wish to announce that Thursday, December 1st will be an allotted day. Thank you.
Document.
Tabling of documents.
Dépôt de projet de loi.
Introduction of government bills.
Monsieur Bryson, appuyé par...
Mr. Bryson, seconded by Mr. McCallum, moves for leave to table a bill entitled An Act to amend the Public Service Labor Relations Act and other acts. This motion is deemed adopted. Mr. Bryson, seconded by Mr. McCallum, moves that this bill be now read a first time and be printed. This motion is deemed adopted.
Ce projet de loi sera-t-il lu?
When shall the bill be read a second time? At the next sitting of the House.